Hi everyone, welcome to Blank Canvas. My name's Wendy Struck. We're here at the Esplanade today. I'm going to do a small painting assemblage, very much like some of the pieces here in my show. It's a little smaller, but the same idea. I've got a found piece of wood here. This is actually the lid of an old cigar box, I believe. So I collect a lot of pieces and use them as I need to, or as certain pieces start to be born. This piece could eventually be used in a larger piece, or it could just stand on its own. And I would decide that later on. So I could use this. I'm kind of trying to decide which format to use. I do a lot of spinning around of different objects to see what I want to be the bottom and the top. So I think I'm going to use it this way. So this is kind of my found object, and I'm going to paint inside here. So I'm going to use some of the subject matter and the themes that are in this show. So I'm going to start with some trees here. I do paint a lot of trees. So I'll start just with a brush to kind of draw out the outline. I've got a couple images that I'll work from. I won't copy them exactly, but I'll use them as a reference. I'm just going to mix a little bit of a neutral color with some, I think I've got some red oxide and a little bit of Payne's gray, just kind of a brown color. I won't go too dark yet until I decide I like the lines that I'm making. So I'm going to do this tree fairly close up so that I get some good texture and I can really bring some texture into it. And the composition will be fairly dynamic. I like the close-up images. And I seem to be taking it all the way up the side. And I'm not sure if I'll leave that, but we'll decide that later. So just sort of a line drawing now. And then I'll start to fill it in and give it some form. So I'm using acrylic paint today. I did start out as an oil painter when I was in university. But because I use a lot of mixed media and build up using glue and various mediums, I find the acrylic paint, because it dries a little quicker, works better for me these days. So I'm going to correct some lines here. It's great because acrylic paint does dry quickly. I can move things around if I want to. I can paint over it fairly soon because it's going to be dry. So I will eventually paint in the negative space as well. And that kind of gives me another opportunity actually almost to redraw what I have here, painting in the negative space. So I think I'll do that next. I do use sponges sometimes. I find they're good just for wiping things off. I used to be a set painter, and we used a lot of sponges for painting. It kind of becomes an extension of your hand in a way that a brush doesn't quite the same way. And also this kind of gives me a chance to just move this color around. I'm not being too precious about it at this point. I like all the different textures and kind of a roughness. A lot of my pieces do have kind of I like if it has that sort of archival quality, so a little bit of age to it. And it's fun that way because I don't have to be too careful and precise. I can be a little looser. Okay, so I think I'm going to go in the background a little bit now. Maybe with some blue. The pieces in this show are all very, I painted all the objects and the canvases to completely white before I started. I wanted a lot of white space. So I'm treating this piece the same way, starting with the white in the background. I'll probably leave a lot of that white there. And then the colors that I'm using are more muted and not neutral in this show. So I'm going to follow the same kind of feel. I've got some blue here, but I need to tone it down. So I'm going to grab some of this red oxide that's kind of orange. Blue and orange are the opposites. They're complementary pairs, so they work well to neutralize each other. I think I like that. So I'm just going to go in the negative space here. I'm going to get this sponge back involved and just spread it out. Kind of starting lightly, so it's a little bit like a underpainting, and then I will slowly build up a little thicker layers. See how I feel about this color. So there is a piece in this show that has trees on it. I think I called that piece Our House. And I painted trees over top. So I'm often dealing with themes of kind of inside and outside and public space and private space. And a lot of nature. I kind of am interested in sort of our living spaces, I guess, where we choose to live and what home is to people. So we do see a lot of houses in my work, and I am going to add a little house to this piece after. But it'll be a photo transfer, and I do use those a lot too, because I like the layers. I create a lot of layers, especially with the mixed media pieces. So it's kind of nice, this box kind of becomes a frame and a support at the same time because it has that depth in it. I guess I could have used it the other way too. I could have painted on the other side, but I decided to paint it inside because if I want to add any sort of objects, sometimes I'll use the little shelf here or the bottom part of the box as a shelf and put objects in. We'll see when it's all done. Then I can decide better what might work in there. I think I'm going to add a little branch. Feels a little empty on this left side. I'm going to go over that with some white so that I can bring it back to look more like the rest of that branch or the other branches. cover up this line here because I moved that over a little bit. So I think I'm happy with that. I'm kind of looking at the composition. I want it to, yeah, kind of have some balance, and not be too small. So I think I'm happy with that. It's kind of pleasing, and I think I'll keep going and start a little bit of the layers. So I think I'll just lightly, again, very much like just an underpainting, thin layers. I'm going to add a bit of light and shadow, make it a little more three-dimensional at this point. So now I'm going to decide where my light source is. If I look at my photo here, there's not a lot of light, but maybe because I'm right-handed, I often make the light source come from the right, so I'm just going to go with that. We've kind of got light coming from that side. So I'm going to make all the shadows, or the darker shadows, on the left side. It's kind of nice. I didn't plan for it, but I like this Payne's Gray and the red oxide are giving me a little bit of a purpley color here too. Sort of a violet tinge in the brown, which is kind of nice. So I'm doing this piece very much like I work in my studio, where I will have sort of a basic plan, whether it's like images, resources that I'm using, the objects, but I don't know exactly how it's going to be put together. So I kind of get a loose outline and then always leave room for changing things or just being spontaneous, or like this purple color, going, okay, I didn't plan that, but I like it, so I'm going to keep going. Or like this, I wasn't sure about wrapping the tree around this part, but I like that too. So I think I'm going to do that all the way around. It's a little tricky because it has to look somewhat right from the front. And again, I can clean up any little messy bits later. I'm just still the beginning sort of layers here. When I teach people painting, I often have to convince them that, you know, it's okay if it doesn't look totally perfect yet and polished, because there's lots of layers to go. If you get too, I guess if you get, in my mind, if you get too tight too soon, then you kind of leave no room for spontaneity. And I'm always trying to kind of loosen up with my painting. Getting a little watery there. Okay. So at this point, I'm actually going to start layering sort of pieces of dried acrylic paint. So I do this process a lot these days. I really enjoy it's almost like building in a way, almost sculpturally. So what I do often is I let my paint dry on a palette. I often have just plastic lids or bigger plastic, nice and smooth, because the acrylic will peel off of there really well. So this is some paint that I just spread on there, couple days ago, and it's all dry enough that I can peel it right off. So I'll show you how that works. So I'll do this at the end, usually, of every sitting. So even with this paint here at the end, I will just take my palette knife and sort of smear it together. And the colors underneath will be a little different than what's on top. So then I have the option to use both sides. So I'm just going to put that aside. Basically, acrylic paint is plastic, so it just comes off nicely in these thin pieces. And at this point, because it's not completely dry, it's kind of stretchy too. So I can actually kind of move it into different shapes, or I will cut it into different shapes, depending what I'm using it for. So I'll show you, I did bring some other pieces too. Lots of different colors. So this whole container here is filled with all these dried acrylic pieces. So these are a little older. They've been dried for a longer time. So they feel a little bit different. So I've got lots of reds and blues here, so I've got to decide what I'm going to use. Just going to spread some out there. And I'll need my scissor. So I think I'll start with some of the darker pieces and start to build some of that shadow that I've already just painted in, just kind of roughed it in. So I will kind of break apart these pieces so that they will fit in that shape of a branch. So I will usually use my gel medium to stick these pieces on. And a brush, just like I'm painting. So I'll start down here. So I'm just putting some of the gel medium on. The gel medium's great because it works for many things. You can mix it with your paint. You can use it as an adhesive like this. And I also use it for my photo transfers as well. So I'm just picking out pieces. I really like doing this process because you can see there's a few different colors in there. So I get some really unexpected texture and color. So I'm just picking pieces that are around the same value so that I get that shadowy side of the tree. And I'll keep picking out pieces and just ripping them or cutting them. And again, I can use either side, so I've got lots to choose from. And it works really nice for trees because it really gets that kind of barked texture. And then I can also paint over these as well if I want to knock some of the color back or cover up any colors that are a little too bold or something. It's neat. I don't know, I just find the little pieces, there's always a piece that's like the perfect shape, even just ripping it off. This one's a little bigger, so maybe I'll stick it down here. I also get a nice, well, this is a fairly smooth edge right now, but maybe I'll Bring that out a bit, like this side. So it's kind of rough. And it's not completely smooth because most trees aren't completely smooth on the edge. So I guess I'm using kind of some blues in here and a bit of browns. A little bit of red sneaking in there. So I'm picking the side of the piece that is sort of the straightest to be on the edge of the branch. So all of this edge is a little more angular inside. And I am going over, I guess, I am going over each piece with the gel medium as well. So it'll make it kind of shiny. It's a gloss gel, so it'll have that shiny coat even when it dries. I gotta search my other stash here. I walk the trails in Medicine Hat quite a bit, so I'm always taking pictures of trees. Usually for my resource, I will use a photo that I've taken myself. The odd time I do use other images, but I do like to use my own images sort of so that it reflects the things that I'm observing. So this tree, this image, it does come from one of the trails here in Medicine Hat. All right, so it's starting to come together, look a little more tree-like. I guess I use the images of trees a lot because I'm sad to see winter coming, like many people may. I like to be outside, so that's another reason I do often have natural landscape in my pieces, and often they're juxtaposed or layered with images of the house or inside. So I think a lot about how people are in their private space versus their outside, and kind of what it means to be out in nature, and how that kind of informs kind of who we are, and because the weather does sort of dictate to us how we can spend our time. Obviously, we can't go outside in winter without our layers of coats. And I think, well, obviously, maybe not, it's not obvious, but I find being outside gives you that sense of being in the present moment. And that's definitely one of the things I love about painting and making art, is you just get so into the process that, you know, all the other thoughts fall away and you're just really present. I think that's why time goes by so fast. A lot of times when I'm teaching, people are always so surprised. Well, 2 hours will go by and they think they've only been there for half an hour. So it can be that kind of meditative experience. Okay. So almost got all of the shadowy sides of this tree on. And then I will decide what to do on the other side. I probably will still do some of this building up with the dried paint, but I'll use a little bit more wet paint as well. Okay, we'll put just a couple more pieces on. I think we have time for. All right, pretty happy with it. We'll see how it goes next time. Thanks for watching Blank Canvas, everyone. I hope you look around the city for various places to do painting classes. We offer different things at the Hive and various places around the city. Inspire, there's the art club, lots of great places to try out your creativity. Thanks.